In honor of XCOM 2 getting a major free expansion this week, I figured this would be a perfect time to discuss the impact that personalization has on a game and getting people engaged with the characters and just general gameplay. Now, we've talked about this before, and the last time we focused a lot more on the customization side of things. And while we will be talking briefly about that here, we're going to be focusing more on personalization. But just to recap, when it comes to both these terms, a lot of people will interchange them when that's not really the case. Customization refers to the player choosing in-game or game-changing options for their character, their playstyle, etc. Classes, perks, quirks, talent trees, weapons, you name it, those would be examples of customization. Personalization refers to games that allow you to control the aesthetics or overall look of your character, but without any gameplay impacting options. So, height, weight, hair color, your gender, your sexual orientation, the color of your clothing, the graphical effects associated to your weapons. You can have games be as simple as just literally letting the character choose. Do you want to be a brunette or a blonde? Or you can go as far as having them control the exact articulation of their nose and the bone structure of the character's face. And for games that make use of personalization, the big examples are those that generally allow the player to create their own character or team or faction or stuff like that. But we can even see this in games with predefined characters that allow you to simply maybe control the color of the armor or color of weapons and so on and so forth. But whatever the case may be, personalization has a very big impact on player engagement. As I said about 2 minutes ago, XCOM 2 is getting a free tactical legacy pack that's coming out, I believe, this week at the time of this recording. And besides offering new maps and gameplay options, they're also bringing elements such as classic or revised armor sets that you can put onto your characters, revising the music, and things along those lines. And while I don't have any footage of XCOM 2, which once I get my new computer, that will definitely be something we're playing, you can count on that, we can even go as far back as the original XCOM in terms of the power that personalization offers. Now, when it comes to personalization, it's basically allowing players to define a character, and as the name implies, it makes things personal. And while it doesn't sound as involving compared to something like being able to choose your weapon type or your perks and stuff along those lines, it does go a long way of creating a connection between the player and the game. There are people who will spend 10 to 20 seconds building a character in an RPG, and then there are people who will spend an hour plus making sure that their character is exactly how they want it, down to the exact height, weight, and again, the curvature of their face and body to make sure it's what they want it to be. And while I don't do that in Dark Souls, you can definitely bet that I spent a lot of time getting armor and aesthetics looking on my soldiers in XCOM 2. But before we talk a little bit more about why all this matters and some of the considerations you need to think about, we're going to switch over to some game footage, and I kind of already gave it away, I think, as to what game we're going to talk about. And now a quick shout out to the supporters over on patreon.com/GWBycer. Alright, apparently I'm a liar, as it turns out I did have footage of XCOM 2 to show. See, I'm so good, I even surprise myself sometimes. But when it comes to personalization, it is such a big part, again, of getting characters in, or getting people involved in their respective characters. With the original XCOM, all you really had control over was the name of your actual units, while the squads themselves were pre-generated from a number of set templates. With XCOM 2, Firaxis went the super full involved feature here, as you'll see over the footage while I'm talking. And again, personalization doesn't sound from the outside that big of a deal. Why should people care about what my character's weight is, when instead I can design elaborate skill trees and talents and stuff like that. But the reason why personalization works is that it allows that connection between characters, and it allows the player to feel like they are actually impacting the game space around them in terms of their own chosen avatar. Now, there are examples of games that may not have individual characters like in XCOM, but still allow personalization options, such as being able to design logos that can appear on a ship, your ship's color, even just aesthetic options like that. Anything that you can basically put your own stamp on goes a long way towards adding personalization. And for people, again, who do really get involved with video games from a storytelling or from a personal aspect, these options allow them to have that connection to their characters. Like I said, for me, I don't really get involved on that level of detail. I know there are people who spend a long time defining characters in Stardew Valley, in RPGs, narrative-focused titles, etc. But for me, like as you can see over this video, I spend quite a bit of time trying to get my character to look just right in XCOM. Now, with that said though, there are some important considerations that can go a long way towards making personalization options be better for your game. The first one is very obvious. Whatever choices that you allow the player to personalize, they need to be represented in a visual aspect somewhere within the game space itself. Being able to just define a character in text, but then you don't see any of that with their in-game representation, doesn't really add that personalization option. Again, the beauty of XCOM that Firaxis did with XCOM Enemy Unknown and with XCOM 2 and so on, is that however I define this character, they are going to be shown that way front and center when they're on a mission, down to what armor I choose, the color of their weapons, the muzzle flare, you name it, all that stuff is actually in-game and represented. And it does take a lot of work when it comes to personalization options. And to be simple, you can never have enough. With how many features of clothing, hairstyles, armor, color, you name it, people will always want more. And it can be almost like an endless development. And you'll never make everybody completely happy. But it's important to at least touch on the big ones. Again, how people define themselves in real life, from the style of their hair, color of the clothing they wear, and what we're seeing more lately in terms of LGBT representation, with having far more options for gender, beyond just male and female. But again, anything that you can do to allow somebody to represent themselves, or even just represent a style or theme that they want, will help bring people into these games. And the second part of why personalization, it's hard to say personalization really fast there, everybody, is that it allows you to start developing stories around these people and these characters. A major part of the allure of MMO design is allowing people to essentially role play in that world. And there are fans of MMOs who have extensively wrote AARs, or after action reports, or just stories about their characters. And it allows them to, again, have that connection that goes beyond just gameplay. Again, what I'm doing right here with defining my character and having my lovely blue gun here, this has no impact on how I play XCOM. Because my gun is blue is not going to make it aim any better. But being able to do all this it just allows me to have that connection. Another thing that I really like about XCOM 2 is that it allows you to save your characters in a pool that the game will then pull from while you're playing. So it's not like I spend 50 minutes to an hour defining a character, and then they die, and then I'm never going to see them again, and that work was wasted. In fact, I had friends, we all put our respective characters into a pool so that we could use that for our game. So we had, again, that deeper connection. And going back to what I said a few seconds ago, and this will be where we'll wrap things up, ARs, or after action reports, have become a very popular way, again, for players to further express their connection to these characters and to these games. The original XCOM had many ARs written where characters would take simply how a battle would unfold and turn into a massive opera of people living, dying, missing 95% chances, and you get the picture. But again, this all goes towards making your game seem greater than the sum of its parts. And while we may all be playing XCOM, or an MMO, or Dark Souls, or you name it, we all have our own personal take on these games, and it keeps us that much more invested. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thoughts. Be sure to check back for more discussions in the future. And as a final question for everyone watching, besides the obvious examples we've mentioned, can you think of games that really went above and beyond in terms of personalization? Let me know in the comments below, but check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check back for our regular streaming, most nights at 9:30, 10 EST, and you'll find a schedule linked down below. For a collection of my writings as well as audio casts on design, you'll find that at game-wisdom.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at GWBycer. If you're interested in hanging out and talking about game design topics, we have a Discord channel with the basic tier open to everybody, and that is linked down below as well. If you'd like to support us on Patreon, it is at patreon.com/GWBycer. Your support can help to keep things going and growing, and you can earn rewards such as ad-free versions of our talks, votings for our specific Let's Plays and grab bag streams, and more. But that's it for now. Thanks again for watching. I hope you come back for more great discussions on design here and on GameWisdom.com, where we examine the art and science of games.